Hello, and welcome to the Design Thinking for Entrepreneurs webinar, a training brought to you by the Indian Country Digital Trainers Program at the National Congress of American Indians. My name is Yana Allen, and I serve as the Director of Civic Engagement and Special Projects at NCAI. Today, I'm pleased to introduce our instructor, Jake Foreman. Jake, who is absentee Shawnee, is a specialist in the facilitation and development of engaging learning experiences for students of all ages. He is also the program manager of New Mexico Community Capital's Financial and Business Basics course that is designed to help build a solid foundation to form and grow business ideas with a personal financial plan for success. Welcome, Jake.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this live stream, Design Thinking for Entrepreneurs, hosted by the National Congress for American Indians. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills training and tools. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Henry Jake Foreman, and I'm so excited that you're here with us. Today, we're going to learn the principles of design thinking process and how to apply that process to create innovative solutions for identified problems. In this workshop, I'm working with my co-instructor, Yana Allen. Later, I'll pass it off to her to answer some of your questions live at the end of today's workshop. We want this to be as helpful for you as possible, so make sure to post your questions directly under this live stream video on the Grow with Google on-air site. We'll choose the top voted questions, so make sure to upvote your favorites. If we don't get to answer all of your posted questions, our team will reply and answer all questions directly in the Q&A shortly after the virtual event concludes. If you would like to access the additional resources for this class, click on the Resources tab at the top of your screen. You'll also be able to access a replay of this virtual event in the future by clicking On Demand on the Grow with Google on-air homepage. And don't forget to post and share using the social Grow with Google. Finally, you also have the option to turn on your YouTube's closed captioning to follow along. To do so, click the closed captioning button directly on the video player of your screen. Now let's get started. We'll begin today's live stream by learning the 5 phases of the design thinking process and how that process can help you to more effectively build products and services that address the challenges of your target audience. Then we will go through each phase of the process and discuss how you can apply these concepts to your own ideas, starting with understanding your audience, identifying their challenges, and then crafting and testing the solutions we have for them. In today's session, we will do a few activities that you'll need to make some notes on. If you prefer to take digital notes, we will show you how to open a Google Doc. If you would like to take written notes, right now is a good time to take out some pen and paper. For those of you taking digital notes on a Google Doc, go ahead and open a new browser window. Type google.com, sign in using your Gmail address and password. Click on the Google Apps icon. Here you'll see all of the Google applications that come with your account. Notice that your most recently used apps appear first. Click More to expand the list. You can go to Gmail, Sheets, and Slides here. You can also access your Google Drive where all of your projects are stored. Let's take a quick look at your Google Drive first. Google Drive allows you to store, access, and share files like documents, slideshows, forms, and photos in one place. Instead of being stored on one computer, your Google Drive files are stored in the cloud, a safe place on the internet where you can save important information. After you save something on your Google Drive, you can easily access it from any computer, smartphone, or tablet with internet access. Files stored on Google Drive won't get lost, even if your computer crashes, and the projects you create with Google applications are automatically stored on your Google Drive. You don't have to remember to click Save. An example of Google Drive is shown with a GIF on the side, which displays someone clicking on the app's icon and selecting Drive. If you've never created anything with Google Apps before, it will be empty. After you start creating projects in Google applications, they will be stored here. For your Google Drive, click New Google Docs and a blank document to have your doc ready for today's activity. Remember, as soon as you open this document, it will save automatically in your Drive, so there's no need to remember to save your work. So what exactly is design thinking? Design thinking is a methodology used by designers to solve complex problems. This approach has been used to brainstorm solutions for societal issues like getting kids to eat healthy school lunches, as well as to help well-established companies redefine their place in a fast-changing industry. You may use design thinking to come up with your first business idea. If you already have a business, you may use this methodology to improve an existing service, product, or even website. Design thinking isn't just for coming up with the next great product or business. It should be an important part of how you connect with your customers now and in the future. Now, what is technologically and economically feasible can change depending on your context, of course. What you're able to create as a student over 4 years will likely differ from what you might be able to create if you had access to the amount of data and/or computing power that many large tech companies like Google have. Even so, the important thing is to keep in mind is that using this design thinking process will provide you with a framework that will be useful even when you don't have a ton of resources available to you. And I'll show you a few examples of that later on in the workshop. To start, let's talk about what this methodology is all about. The design thinking process was created by the Stanford University and the company IDEO and is being successfully used to create small projects and big ones. The methodology includes 5 phases, which we will see on the slide here. Empathize. In this phase, you will observe your ideal audience, engage with them, and immerse yourself in their challenges and needs. Good design is all about understanding the needs of your users. Define. In the defining phase, you will express the problem of your users in the form of their point of view. Ideate. In the ideating phase, you will transition from identifying problems to finding solutions for those problems. Prototype. In this phase is all about getting ideas out of your head and into the real world. Test. The last phase is all about testing. You can create the next iteration of prototypes, test, learn, and iterate. The continuous refinement is an ongoing process. We talked about what design thinking is and the phases of its methodology, but how is design thinking used in practice? There are products that you use every day that were created with the design thinking process. Designers and innovators thought about you, the consumer, and the needs or challenges you have around your everyday activities to make the products and services you buy and use better. Let's look at some examples. Many of you are likely watching a lot of on-demand television right now from streaming services or your cable provider. Think about the challenges television watchers had prior to the introduction of on-demand television. You may have had to perfectly time when your favorite show was coming on and be home for it. Later, you might have had to set up the timer on your VHS tape recorder. Perhaps you grew up with the digital video recorders, but you still had to fast forward through the commercials. With each of these scenarios, there are pain points and challenges that the invention of on-demand television alleviates. You don't have to be home to watch your favorite program. No accidentally taping over your niece's dance recital VHS tape. And in many cases, on-demand services allow you to skip through commercials altogether. In our next example, almost all car owners can likely relate to the challenge you faced when your arms are full of groceries, bags, or kids, and you're trying to get your car door or trunk open. If you apply the principles of design thinking process to this scenario, you can probably see where the consumers have improvised in other similar scenarios. What might you use to keep the front door to your home propped open when you have your hands full of groceries? Your foot, right? Design thinking was applied to the invention of foot-activated car doors when designers understood a common challenge for car owners and the resources available for them in these scenarios: a free foot. Ride and home sharing might be some of those modern solutions to everyday challenges that you think of when you imagine the innovation that could come out of design thinking. Ride and home sharing brands were born from challenges we've all likely had. Maybe you were planning a family trip and wanted more space than a hotel room. Perhaps you knew you want a kitchen, or you just wanted a more local experience, so it made sense to rent a local homeowner's place. The same is true for ride sharing. When we all likely never thought we'd hop into the backseat of someone else's car, ride sharing has alleviated some big pain points in transportation. There aren't always taxis available in your area you're in. If you're traveling internationally, ride-sharing allows you to book transportation without understanding the local language or even having the local currency. Think about other things you use daily, those inventions you couldn't live without. Many of them have been created with the design thinking methodology. Let's start with the first phase in the design thinking process. The first step in design thinking process is to establish empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. If we want to focus on the user, our goal as we begin the design thinking process should be to first connect with the user's stories, insights, and emotions. We must be able to put ourselves in their shoes, so to speak. But what do we mean when we say user? Well, the user in design thinking would be the person or population for which you're hoping to build a solution. When identifying the user, you want to be as specific as possible by adding more descriptors, e.g., not just parents, but parents of toddlers or parents in NYC. It's important to make sure you understand your user truly is. If you're looking for a solution for, say, college admission, you might quickly say that your users are high school graduates, but when you stop to think about it, the user is actually the parents of high school graduates. This practice helps you narrow down the characteristics of your potential audience so you can really dive into the core issues they may face. Think about the way you may have described your users or target audience in the past. Oftentimes, we start with demographic information such as gender, age, or nationality. Sometimes we only consider one characteristic of an individual such as parent or working professional. When it comes to your users, you want to be as specific as possible so you really understand that audience and what makes them tick. When you dig deep on their needs, it's easier to create a solution for them that they will jump on the chance to benefit from. Let's look at some examples. You may say your target audience is women of color, but this is a huge group of people with an endless number of unique interests and needs. Maybe you're looking to create an all-natural hair care line specifically for women of color. A more targeted explanation of your users would be women of color looking for products without added chemicals or toxins, or women of color who need to use natural products due to health or allergy concerns. You may have a handful of specific audience, but with these details, this will help you make a better market for them. Another example could be parents. But for the parents here, you likely already know there's a huge difference between parenting a newborn and a teenager. Also, as a designer, what problem are you looking to solve for parents? Maybe you market your products or services to seniors over the age of 70, but how can you get more specific? Let's say your product or service is for seniors who live alone. That will refine your marketing efforts to seniors over 70 in a single-member household. Lastly, let's look at Latinx college students as potential user group. Latinx college students make up a large group, but maybe you're offering temporary housing to college students. So instead, you should focus your efforts on Latinx students or their parents seeking temporary housing near universities in a specific geographic location. Now, depending on your business idea, you might be thinking, my users can be from all different walks of life and they don't fall into any one demographic. This could be true if, say, you're an online counselor or you own a shoe repair business. In this case, think about what makes your audience unique. What qualities or interests do your users have that would draw them to your product or service versus someone else? Find that niche that makes you unique. For example, maybe your shoe repair business offers 24-hour turnaround for repairs. Your ideal user might include business travelers or people with an important event coming up. If you already have a business and you're unsure of who your users might be, you can use tools like Google Analytics to learn more about your audience. Now, let's try an activity. In this activity, you're going to step into the shoes of your user base and try to brainstorm at least 10 challenges that they may face. Remember, try to first specify who these users are, just like we did a minute ago. Really put yourself in the shoes of your selected population/user and empathize with their day-to-day. Brainstorm all the potential obstacles that they may come across. Okay, I'll give you about 3 minutes to try this out. You can use the Google Doc you opened at the beginning of the class to take notes on those challenges. For those of you who may have missed it earlier, navigate to docs.google.com. If you feel stuck, consider starting from the morning until the evening and walk through their day to identify challenges. All right, our second phase in the design thinking process is to define a problem statement. Now that we have a clear image of our users in mind, we want to operationalize their problems. To do so, let's focus on one core problem from our list of challenges that we just created for our user. This core problem can be a synthesis of the list or one that just stands out the most. Using the core problem, we'll be creating a problem statement. What's a problem statement and why do we need it? The problem statement will be a succinct statement that clearly organizes the characteristics of the user's need or the core problem you just identified, and the insight into why the user is experiencing this need. Developing a problem statement is critical in the design thinking process. Let's look at an example. Now, this is a sample of a completed problem statement. Here we have our user, Sam, who is a busy manager. His need or core problem is that he needs a way to integrate healthy eating habits. The reason why he has this need or the insight stems from a desire to not feel like he's on a diet. The problem statement is telling us that he needs to help Sam find some solutions that will integrate healthy eating habits for Sam without making him feel like he's on a diet. Pretty clear, right? It can be tempting to try to insert a solution during the problem statement stage of the design thinking process, but try to rein back that urge until the ideation stage. Here we're pulling from our empathy stage to hone in on the true values of our users to tap in their true need. I want to share an important tip with you. I always tell people to build the problem statement from the bottom up. The more insight you have into the emotions that are driving the need, the better position you are into going into the next step, ideating. So, instead of, Sam needs to learn about nutrition to get a better eating experience during lunch. Yes, we all know we should eat better, but why do so many diets fail? There's a lot of emotion and frustration in that feeling that you have to give up all the yummy food you love. We know we need to eat better, but we don't want to feel like we're on a diet. Try. Sam is a busy manager who needs a way to integrate healthy eating habits into his daily life because he doesn't want to feel like he's on a diet. Now it's your turn. In just a few moments, I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on your problem statement. Think back to your notes on your user base. Remember the list of challenges you came up with as you imagine life in their shoes. Now synthesize those challenges into a core problem that you will address for your user base into a problem statement. I'm going to bring back the previous slide with our problem statement template and an example so you can refer to it as you craft your own statements. Let's go to the third phase in the design thinking process, ideating. So now that we've emphasized with our chosen user, analyzed and synthesized those observations to define the problem using a problem statement, it's time to ideate, or in other words, create ideas. This is the phase where we think about all the possible solutions that come to mind. Here's a popular ideation activity used a lot in Google design sprints, Crazy Eights. Using Google Docs, insert a 2x4 table, or if you prefer, fold a piece of paper into 8 rectangles. In each section of your table or rectangle, I want you to write out a different idea on how to solve your user's problem. Maybe you'll have 8 new ideas. Maybe you'll have 1 new idea with 7 ideas that build upon that one idea. The point here is to practice letting loose and creating as many possibilities as you can. Don't worry about feasibility right now. Blue sky thinking is encouraged. The beauty of this process is that we can let our mind go wild with ideas. Let's go back to a few of our examples when we were discussing different user groups. First, we mentioned targeting women of color looking for all-natural hair products. Now you might already have in mind what types of products or services you want to offer your users, but in the ideating phase, it's all about considering all the different ways in which you can offer them a solution to their challenges. Your first thought may be to create an all-natural hair care line for women of color. On the other hand, you may want to consider not even offering a product to this user group and instead alleviated their challenges with finding all natural hair care products through a database or app you create. Additionally, one of your ideas might be open to an actual salon where you only use all natural hair care products. One of our other examples of a potential user group included Latinx college students looking for temporary housing. The first idea that comes to mind might be creating an online roommate matching service for Latinx students specifically. If you'd like to consider going the product route for this group, you may consider investing in buildings that you could furnish and offer as temporary rentals to your user group. Now, the fun part of ideating is that we could really think outside the box. What if these students didn't need temporary housing because you created online learning programs for them to get college credit from their home? You see how the ideating phase can open your mind to new and different ways of solving problems for your target audience. Ideally, the recommended practice is to have an unlimited amount of time to engage in unrestricted brainstorming during this phase. But for the purposes of this session, I'll pause for about 3 minutes so you can practice creating some ideas guided by the problem statement you just crafted. Remember, no idea is too crazy. What you might think of now could be something your competitors bring to life in the future. So you'll be ahead of the game if you recognize every possibility. Now it's time to prototype. Now, how do we know if these solutions we outlined in the last exercise would work? We prototype. Prototypes are inexpensive, scaled-down versions of the solutions created in the previous ideation stage. As you build prototypes one by one, they are either accepted, improved, and re-examined, or rejected based on the user experience. Remember, this is just an experimental stage. You aren't trying to create the workable product here just yet. But this step is still critical as you are testing out your ideas to gain as much feedback from your potential users as possible. Through the prototyping process, you'll gain a better understanding of the constraints inherent within the product/feature and problems you may have not foreseen. You'll also have a more informed perspective of how real users would react to and feel about the final product while they interact with the prototype. Once you've collected enough data from the prototyping stage, it's time to finally create the MVP, or minimum viable product. This is what we call the simplest version of a workable product that is developed with the core features that will satisfy early adopters, but also provide the lowest risk for the investors. That means the MVP should be cost-effective and quick to develop while still providing the basic functions that you decided on. And you'll have an idea of what your early adopters, or what we call the first users, that are eager to try something new will be looking for thanks to the prototyping stage. Let's say your goal was to create a vehicle that could take you from point A to point B. Now, there isn't much you can do with just a wheel or two wheels and an axle, or the body of a car without the wheel engine, so the only viable product is the fully functioning vehicle with all the bells and whistles. In the bottom example, we focus on an MVP that solves the problem of our audience in the simplest way, getting someone from point A to point B. Now, your minimum viable product is not your end goal. It's one of the many steps that will take you to your final established product. But to get to that point, you'll do what I'm sure sounds familiar to you now in the design thinking process. Iterate and iterate again. Keep testing your product or service with your user base and follow the feedback. Maybe that leads you to more changes and enhancements. Maybe it takes you backwards to remove certain features altogether. What's important here is that you're staying flexible and listening to the needs of your user base to create the best and most well-received version of your product service. We won't be prototyping together in this virtual session, but following this class, you'll want to sit down and think about your options for a prototype. Pick one of your feasible ideas out of the 8 you came up with during the Crazy 8 exercise, and flesh out how you would build this solution to include the technology needed, time required, money needed, and resources that you might already have available to you. Last but certainly not least is the testing phase. This is the final stage of the design thinking process. We won't be practicing this phase together, but if you were to implement the design thinking process in real life, you would definitely want to test out your solution, evaluate it, and depending on how it goes, you may or may not have to go back and repeat the other phases. Testing is an iterative phase. What does that mean? It means that you continue to go back to make change, tweak features, and in some cases, you may even decide to scrap the solution for a different one you identified during the prototyping stage. So now that you've learned the different phases of the design thinking process, you might be wondering, how can you use the design thinking to make a new idea more successful, or to take an existing business or product and tailor it to the changing needs of your customers, especially in today's climate. Let's look at an example, Sunrise Coffee. Juani Romero, a former barista, opened her coffee shop on the first day of the Great Recession of 2008. Now she owns 3 cafes. While Juani was initially hesitant to tackle new digital tools, her online presence became critically important when the COVID pandemic came to her city of Las Vegas. She knew she needed a way to keep her company solvent for the coffee shop, its employees, and the community. Juani had to look at the changing needs of her employees and customers. This time also brought new importance to supporting her customers and those first responders whose work was critical to the health of the community. Juani took her business almost entirely digital by selling her sustainably sourced beans online. So she added a web function that allowed visitors to donate coffee to first responders and healthcare work. And she would kick in 2 additional bags for each one donated. She was amazed at the response. Customers started flocking in droves and buying her coffee online. The media took notice as well. That sense of community and a desire to help others in a time of need was of new importance to Wani and her customers, and she redesigned her business to support the needs by leveraging new tools to deliver a different type of product and service to her audience. And that concludes the final fifth stage of the design thinking process. To recap, the 5 stages were: 1, empathize, where we stepped into the shoes of our user base to identify their challenges. Number 2, define, where we expressed a core problem in the form of point of views. Number 3, ideate, where we transition from identifying problems to brainstorming as many solutions as possible. Number 4, prototype, where we brought the ideas out of our heads and into the real world. And finally, the testing stage, which takes us to the next iteration of prototypes to improve our minimum viable products by testing, learning, and iterating again and again. Give yourselves a pat on the back for following along. We had a real working session today. As you think about your iterative process in the design thinking method, here are some free resources provided by Google that can help you along your journey. If you want to sharpen your business and marketing skills, check out Primer. This is a free app you could download to your phone. If you have an Android device, you could download it at Google Play. If you have an Apple device, you could download it from the Apple App Store. This has a series of short, fun lessons that are all less than 5 minutes each. You can access lessons specific to learning to work from home and do business online by visiting g.clo/primer/fromhome. Another great resource is our quick help videos. Get answers and learn how to make the most of Google's tools in just a few minutes. You'll learn things like how to get your business listed on Google Search and Maps, how to create a YouTube channel for your business, and how to start a Google Meet conference. Check out the playlist on g.co/glow/quick-help. Grow your digital skills no matter where you're located. Through online workshops, you can learn skills that can help you stay connected and productive while working or managing a business remotely. Curious about the workshops you can take virtually from home? Visit g.co/growonair for our current virtual digital skills workshops and their descriptions. Check out our previous classes on Google Ads, using YouTube to grow your business, and Google Analytics. This wraps up the presentation portion of today's workshop.